Hello, my friends. Glasses on, glasses off, glasses on, glasses off. How should I approach this video? As an intellectual or a common man with my glasses off? I just thought it was kind of funny that I have to wear glasses to read my notes sometimes. And getting older sucks, but it is what it is. And I guess that's a perfectly in line with the discussion I want to have tonight. Now it's kind of late in the evening. It's around 11, and I have obligations tomorrow. But nonetheless, as I intended to make a video earlier talking about ancient technology, ancient peoples, uh, I ended up just saying, it's not worth it. Then, of course, tonight, what happens at 6 p.m., like every, I guess, Thursday, the Y files, which at this point I'm sure at least a percentage of you, it's guaranteed that if you watch YouTube, at least 5 of you have watched the Y files. And he's this guy who has a hecklefish as his companion. And it's so silly and ridiculous. And his sponsors are just so ridiculous. But the guy puts on a good show. I gotta say, he's doing a great job. And he talks about things like alien abductions or stories of technology or basically conspiracy theories. And then he spends the first half defending it and saying, this is what happened. But then spends the next, at least basically the last third of it, saying, but, and he gives the truth to it. And he's done a really good job with it, but the point isn't his channel, but rather that he talked about the topic I wanted to discuss. And so it made me decide that I was going to get out here and talk about this for a little bit. I am fascinated with ancient technology, with the ability to cut the stones that they cut for the pyramids, um, everything to the modern point where we're at, where they've discovered Göbekli Tepe, which shows that humans had actually been building, monuments and intricate carvings 9,000 years ago, rather than the, say 6,000. It just keeps getting bumped back. And there have been debates about the pyramids, whether they're, from 2500 BC or 60,000 years old, 10,000 years old. Honestly, you can't carbon date them. And I've always been fascinated since I was a kid with archaeology. And once I learned that when the pyramids were opened, no mummies were ever found inside, I've always questioned why it's considered a tomb, the tomb of Khufu. And what I found out was that in some of the upper chambers that had been breached, somebody had written graffiti on the wall, the tomb of Khufu. Do we know when or why that was written or whether it's true? No, of course not. But let's just say that the Great Pyramid is an amazing feat of engineering, and that technology can stand the test of time. It can stand massive wind speeds, earthquakes, upheavals. Historically, it's been able to endure a lot to be up as long as it has. And that's just the pyramids. But the reason I bring them up is because they're the most prominent. People talk about the pyramids because, holy shit, they built these giant pyramids out in the middle of the desert. Well, at the time it was probably tropical. And I don't want to get into that, but there was a time when the Nile River passed by where the pyramids are. And this was about, well, let's just say way farther back than people are currently told. Now, I'm not going to pull the Graham Hancock here. And if you're not familiar with him, I'm sure everybody is by now. I've followed him for years, but when he came out with a Netflix series, which was Ancient Archaeology, or what is it? I don't remember. Um, he is a persecutionist in the sense that he feels like he's always attacked because of his extreme views. But if you listen to him speak, a lot of his shit's legit. He's got some great ideas and opinions. However, a lot of his shit just does sound like bullshit. And I'm an honest, let's say, history buff to an extent. A lot of what we've learned has turned out not to be true. People have had technology, and civilization has been more advanced in recent history. When I say recent, I mean within 10,000 years, than we were told previously. It's not because archaeology is always trying to hide something. It's because people are just stubborn. They don't want to change all the books and ideas they already have about history. But this video here is more about what we've lost. And it bothers me that we've lost so much. I live in the Pacific Northwest. We have a lot of Native American tribes here. A lot of the knowledge that they obtained for this local area was gained over thousands of years. And the thing that fascinates me most about American, at least US Native American culture, is that they weren't interrupted by Western influence, or rather European influence, for a very long time. When I was younger, I remember them saying, well, nobody arrived in here until the land bridge during the last ice age. And then they say, oh, well, maybe they were here actually like a couple thousand years before that. And I think people just say, oh, okay, a couple thousand years? I mean, think about that amount of time. But now they're saying people could have been here for 30,000 years. And when you look at the tribes, especially the US tribes and a lot in South America, a lot of folks think that these were all independent tribes that just kind of lived on their own, didn't connect with one another, didn't even know they existed. And that's complete bullshit. Up here where I live, maybe 10 miles east of here, we have, well, it's actually more like 20 miles, the dam, which, the dam, the Bonneville Dam. And that Bonneville Dam backs up Celilo Falls. I might be mistaken. I'm pretty sure it's the Bonneville, because there's the Bonneville and then the Dalles Dam. But I think the Bonneville is the one that blocks off what used to be called Celilo Falls. The Native Americans from the local area here in Oregon, Washington, now what they're called, would come together and they would fish on these rocks as the salmon run came in. And they would work together, even tribes that didn't really care much for each other. But not just tribes here. Tribes would travel for 200 to 300 miles up, the coast to get here, or take boats up and then hike in to get the salmon runs, because it was something that everybody did together. And there was kind of a peace treaty. It was like a set your weapons down. And I say this because people have this idea that ancient peoples were brutal. They were highly intelligent. And it's not just that. The new data, the new information that's come out on Native American culture, let me back up for a minute. When I was about, 11 or 12 years old, I found this book on the shelf called Archaeology, but rather it was called All About Archaeology. Now, if you're not familiar, the All About book series was a series of hardcover books that came out in, I think, the 50s or 60s. So it was pretty outdated. But as a kid, I got my feet wet and I got really fascinated with how awesome it would be to discover a tomb, a mummy, or of course, maybe some gold bullion. But really, my interest was in just understanding how ancient cultures lived. And fast forward, 40 years, 35 years, I still feel the same way. And I'm still fascinated with ancient cultures. But what I've learned is so just sad, over the years. As new data comes out, I'm constantly changing and shifting my idea of what happened in the past. And I see things differently every time I gain new information, like we all should. But one thing that bothers me is that it's not really about what was lost as far as even the languages. I was talking with my wife earlier. I was saying it's unfortunate that we lose so many languages, but at the same time, the ultimate goal of humans was to communicate, to get together and be able to talk together. That's why the Rosetta Stone is such an amazing, you know, discovery. We're like, finally, we can connect together. And so I want to cover a couple of points here. So, the first of all, our ancestors, of course, they had better calendars and better scheduling and understanding because they looked at the stars every night. In North America, the Native American tribes here called the Venus. It was called the divine twins because if you're not familiar, because I think in Greek or in some of the ancient Eastern cultures, it was called Phosphorus and Hesperus. And Phosphorus and Hesperus were the morning and evening star, which was another term for them. Because Venus appears in the morning in the fall, like right now, right at sunrise, but in the evening at sunset during the summer. A lot of people don't know that, so I thought I would point that out. And I don't blame people for not knowing that because we don't study the stars. We don't study the sky. Fuck, most people can't even see the sky anymore. It's just sad. But those things are important and were important to our ancestors. They had it's almost like we look at them as, oh, they were very primitive. Yeah, they knew the calendars but they created all this astrological BS and assumed that the stars had some effect on people and were obsessed with the seasons. Well, yeah, they understood that their crops had to be harvested at a certain time. Being able to watch the stars, set up stargazing things, equipment, this seems very attainable over thousands of years. And but what another aspect that's unfortunate for the Northwest here is herbology and the study of herbs and mushrooms. And I want to make this clear. When Europeans came to North America, they slaughtered a ton of North American, Native Americans here. At the same time, it was disease that killed off up to 80 or 90% of Native Americans here, as well as in South America when Columbus came, and it was horrendous. But the people who died, I would imagine all they would have wanted is to at least preserve their culture, even if it was an accidental death. And the unfortunate fact is that these invaders had such a, they were such religious zealots, as people always are, that they burned all of the codices. And codices are like written manuscripts explaining the stories of the culture. I mean, this is really sad. People don't realize how much of this was burned. There's an old story when the part of the Library of Alexandria, which that story has been overblown and taken, misunderstood. But there's a story about when it was invaded by Muslims and they were told to burn anything that wasn't Quran related. It was actually raided and burned several times. And it's important because even as a metaphor, even if all the stories turn out not to be 100% correct, which a lot of them might not be, the idea is that people have always had the desire to burn and destroy other people's idea of truth. Think about that for a minute. Like, whatever you believe is bullshit because this is what I was taught. And sometimes that's not such a big deal, especially when these are just books passed down. If Christians, Muslims, Jews, they all attack each other and attack each other's Bibles, it doesn't really matter because everything they believe is written down in that book. But when you get to smaller cultures, a lot of this is word of mouth. And there are times when thousands of people die who have memorized some of these plants, these animals, how to utilize and harvest these particular things. It's not just that. Astronomy, understanding how to read the stars, navigate, ancient herbology, knowing which plants to use. Having the dark skies really helped navigate, helped people navigate. But precision building, you know, there were times in history where we could build some amazing structures, and then something happened. Maybe it was the Younger Dryas period. Maybe it was a cataclysm we don't know about yet. I don't know. But there were times when Native Americans could do trepanation. Trepanning is when you cut open the skull to release pressure. They were doing some sort of brain surgery thousands of years ago. And only recently has this really been well understood. In the past, even 20 years ago, a lot of this wasn't really well known. Um, the Mayans, for example, they got their language from the Olmecs, and I believe they had over 800 characters and different words that they used for yeah, 800 characters, and they had a language system that was completely evaded, you know, those who came after them, and therefore they just destroyed it, you know. If you can't understand it, you'll destroy it. Westerners couldn't read the codices, so they destroyed them. And it's really, really sad, but it is what it is. I don't want to say it this way, but religion kills knowledge. Now I have a respect for religion, and it has its own place, especially if it doesn't disturb others. But when your belief in your religion makes you actively go out and seek to destroy other people's religion, then you have a serious mental problem. And through history, we've had a kind of a collective mental problem with what other people believe. All the religious battles through history, the fighting itself and the death pales in comparison to the thousands of years of lost knowledge. Some tribes that were just totally wiped out. Imagine a tribe surviving in the Amazon somewhere with, 1,000 years of history, understanding every local plant, every berry, every connection, where all the animals are, and some bullshit Western oil company come in and just wipe them out. Which, this kind of shit just happened and still happens. And what do? You know, nothing. Just, it's fucked up. It makes me want to, I wish there's something I could do, to stop the loss of knowledge that was passed down word of mouth without a written language quite often, which makes it even harder. The Mayans had a very advanced language, the Native Americans as well, and they also had a very advanced system of understanding and barter trade. There were various tribes that used knots for the exchange of goods and money that took us a long time to really understand. It's like a series of different sized strings with different knots in different places. People are ingenious. They come up with all kinds of amazing things. To lose that is very unfortunate. But, when Westerners came in to, I should say, when the Spanish came into South America, weren't really Westerners. I just use that term in general because it seems like we're the invading force, but they brought with them not just disease, not just an attitude and a desire for more gold and silver, but an attitude that the people there were lesser than them. And I know that a majority of the people that died did so through disease over a period of time. A lot of folks have this idea that Columbus just came in and slaughtered millions of people and left. It wasn't that, In a way, that's what ended up happening, but a lot of it was through disease. But he was looking for El Dorado, like so many other people, city of gold. They just loaded up on silver and gold, took it back, melted it down. All that gold, all those amazing artistic creations were totally lost. And since religion is often involved, it's considered like heretical to keep that stuff. And same with the writings, right? So they were totally burned. But the reason why a lot of people were considered lesser or, um, you know, the way the way a lot of people look at a lot of cultures in South America is, well, they hadn't discovered farming yet. And what we found now is that's not true at all. It's not that they hadn't discovered farming, it's that they planted local plants along with other plants and let nature do the work. They didn't farm as monoculture the way we do now, which is going to bite us in the ass one day anyway. But they did grow food. I mean, there are records of them having their own gardens. They just grew it organically and within the specs. These things disappear from time, so they just seem to be some primal group that built stone walls. These people were smart. They knew a lot, um, quite a bit, quite a lot. But we've been counting and taking records for 30,000 years. We've been trying to be human for a very long time. And whatever that means, I don't really know. I don't know what it actually, entails being human. We don't have our raw source anymore. Once we created language, mathematics, and expectations and started raising our kids a certain way, that put a perspective into all of our minds that this is the way things are. I mean, that seems obvious, but we have a system in place that we've been using for a long time, which could change tomorrow. If every parent tomorrow started teaching their kids a different language, well, the whole future would be a different language or a different culture or a different belief system. That'll never happen and shouldn't because we need variety. But the sad thing is that today, trends last a week. New fads, new diets, new ideas about what's healthy and what's not. And right there, behind that door, we have a wealth of knowledge from some, 80-year-old guy who grew up and was taught all of the herbal remedies in your local area. Fortunately, there are people out there taking notes on these things and interviewing these people, preserving their language and their information and knowledge, and I think that's great. But it's just really sad that so much is lost. And I guess that's all I wanted to talk about. You know, I don't know what ancient people knew or what they built or any type of hidden or occult knowledge. I've studied all the stories about ancient aliens. Yes, I was fascinated with it. I was fascinated with Ancient Aliens when it came out. Okay, I watched the first few seasons and loved it. And then just started saying, who the fuck are these people? What are their credentials? How do I know any of this is true? Then I started looking it up and doing my research and finding out I've been duped by these idiots and it felt pretty stupid. But I bring that up because a lot of them talked about how ancient cultures had, knew about these aliens and these groups. No, people are fucking smart. They created things on their own. They didn't need aliens to do it. Aliens sure as hell didn't build the pyramids. It's just we don't really know the full details. What they were for, what they were used for, why somebody would build something so fucking giant that has really no markings or hieroglyphs on the entire inside. The Great Pyramid has what's called a sarcophagus. It's pretty big though. I think it's like 9 feet. But it has no lid and there was nothing found inside. And the whole of the Great Pyramid had no hieroglyphs carved into the walls. And that always tripped me out. And I thought, what did those people know that we don't know? We speculate. We try to say it's a power source or some sort of a power plant or an antenna to connect us to the Pleiadians. I don't know. But it sure is fucking cool to wonder about, right? What do you think? as everyone seems to say. Leave a comment down below, hit the like button, and I will see you next time. Because I'm sure you want to hear me ramble about some other dumb topic, right?